No animals were harmed in the making of this podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 12 of The Two Vegans. Once again, hello to our new listeners and our regulars. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about labels in veganism, so we're quite excited to share a bunch of different things with you about that. But first, Heathel just got back from the UK, and if you've been following our Instagram, you've been noticing all these very, very delectable food posts from the UK. So she also attended the vegan march on the 26th of August.
It's called the Official Animal Rights March. It's the there's an event company called Surge that does a lot of activism, and they do all these vegan events around the world. This is their third event. There were an estimated 10,000 vegans who had attended the festival. And it was so overwhelming. It was so amazing. The entire vibe. In fact, I actually connected with another vegan online before going there and shared an Airbnb with her. So hi Larissa, if you're listening to this. And it was like we just put on our vegan gear. We put on our message T-shirts and we carried our placards, and we walked. I think it was a 7.5 kilometers march that ended at Hyde Park, and we started somewhere near Millbank. I don't know, it was a very, very emotional walk for me. Like, I found myself kind of being a bit teary-eyed at different moments. Also, it was pretty hilarious in some parts because we just stood outside McDonald's. It was so bad. And people went berserk. Like, we just stood there for 10 minutes shouting slogans outside McDonald's. The authorities had kind of blocked a certain road for us, and we were supposed to stick to it, and we had barriers around it, and there were like other people on the other side of the road thinking that, okay, look at this cult vegans just passing around, and and then we stood outside McDonald's, and you're just seeing people eating their burgers. And I don't know, what is it that vegans especially have against McDonald's in particular? Like, it's not any different from the pizzeria next to McDonald's that also sells a pepperoni pizza, right? But
no, it is quite different.
Do you think?
I mean, first of all, McDonald's invented the franchise concept. So they're one of the reasons why you have all these franchises all over the world. And then they built it on a meat industry, and including abusing produce and everything, right? I mean, we've seen tons of documentaries and stories over the years, but it's all around the meat. So a pizzeria that offers a couple of pizza options or a couple of whatever pepperoni pizza options, whatever, is still very different compared to the company that pioneered selling 1 billion burgers.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I do get where it comes from, but it was just like, anyway, I had my fun. And we just stood there outside calling it Mech Murder and all these things, and it was good. And the march ended with Earthling Ed giving a speech and a couple of other vegan activists giving really, really good speeches. And we kind of did like a moment of silence for all the animals that are slaughtered and being slaughtered currently and so on. So yeah, it was a great experience, and I think I'm ready to do it one more time next year probably. Yeah, if you guys do have the access to do activism in your countries, please go ahead and do it. You will be overwhelmed by the numbers that are increasing. This particular event went from 2,000 vegans to 5,000 vegans to 10,000 vegans, so it's literally doubling every year. Besides this, like UK and London, I went to London and Scotland in particular, right? And it's just booming with veganism. There's like vegan stuff at every corner, and if like Chirag said, if you're following our Instagram, if you're not, then you should. You'll find out all the fancy gems that are found over there in terms of food, and there's literally no excuse these days, at least in London and Scotland, to not go vegan. So yeah, it was a great experience.
Did you happen to connect with any other vegans that were there or part of the march? Did you get a sense of was everybody coming from Europe? Were the people who had flown in just like you had from outside?
So during the march, I couldn't really talk to people because we were just marching, and I was just speaking to a little group over there. But I found out that people were coming from all over the world. The lady I was sharing the Airbnb was coming from Germany. I know a few vegans from Dubai that went from here. There are people who came from Canada. There are people who came from China. So I did see a lot of people coming from different parts of the world and just getting together for animal liberation.
Yeah, I mean, I know the guys from Inside Veganism, although they're based in the UK, were there as well. Like I saw their post the day you were marching as well. So pretty awesome, yeah. So coming to our episode for today, we want to talk about labels.
So we thought, why not we address the issue of labels in veganism, as these days we have labels everywhere. Some of the most annoying labels that we have and probably try and bust the myths around them.
I turned vegan because my sister convinced me to watch Earthlings.
That's Pilar Yamila.
I am half Colombian, half Azerbaijani. And after the documentary, really, I went vegetarian. I didn't go vegan straight away. So I was vegetarian for 2 years, and then the idea was to slowly go into veganism. Yeah, my sister is now vegan as well. She went vegan about 2 months ago, so there's two of us in the family. It was interesting explaining to her parents that we no longer wanted to eat meat. We come from both cultures, very meat heavy. I love seafood, I love meat, everything. So it was a big change. It's different when you look at it from a different perspective, not just I like this and it tastes good, but then when you see how it's made, and it's not just the diet change, it's the lifestyle change. It's everything. It's seeing where your clothes come from, the leather, your makeup, your shampoo, your conditioner, all of these things. So it's a lifestyle change, but it's in a good way. I think it was a good experience, and I think now it's a lot easier because there's so many vegan-friendly places and you can easily veganize foods.
We were talking to multiple people and we asked them, what do you think is the ratio between men to women in vegans in Dubai?
There's a very big disparity. I mean, I would say maybe, I could be wrong, I would say it's 20-80.
And of course, this is just an estimation. But I mean, the fact that, the perception is that's how wide the divide is.
I guess the perception actually comes from whatever we're observing these days, and you don't see a lot of, unfortunately, you don't see a lot of men. I'd like to see more men in veganism for obvious reasons. It is a gender stereotype, but it comes from a place of truth. And it's the same thing in animal rescue as well. I don't see a lot of men out there. There are a few really good animal rescuers that I personally know of in the region, or I know about in the region. However, I don't see, most of them are women, and I guess it's more women out there who actually are okay to embrace their empathetic side and go out there and speak against animal abuse in this case, or anything else for that matter. Interestingly, in a recent survey by Vegan Society in the UK, 37% of vegans were men and 63% were women. Of course, this ratio is more skewed in the Middle East. In America, on the other hand, 79% of vegans are women. So you'd actually think, where does this divide come from?
You know how they say women are more compassionate, or women have more empathy, or women have this smothering thing from nature? I'm not sure if I agree, but that's what they say. And maybe that's why women are more likely to want to help, are more likely to empathize with the animal, to be compassionate, to act rather than just stay on the sidelines. If you look at gender roles, if maybe it's the husband that is the breadwinner in the family, so he has no time maybe to get involved in rescuing, and maybe it's his wife who is. But I also know people that work, and a lot of women that are involved work full-time, and they have full-time jobs, and yet they do, on top of everything, the animal rescue. It would be really interesting to see, actually, to get to the core of the problem as to why it exists there, but it is. But I think slowly I can see that men do want to get involved. I don't think it's an issue as such, it's something that is, and I think we don't know why.
Here's the funny bit about this, right? Like, we were trying to kind of get a sense of what could be the reasons behind that. I'd like to believe, and I have never felt that like my decisions changed just because I was a guy. Like, I think when I decided that no, I wanted to be vegan, I didn't feel like I had any different hang-ups compared to anybody else that felt like they wanted to be vegan. And yet somehow there clearly does seem to be some kind of divide happening.
I guess it all brings us down to the gender roles that have been going around for centuries. Men have always been the providers of the family. They have been expected to go out, hunt and gather food since the caveman era. And women, on the other hand, are expected to stay at home. If you look at advertisements as well, barbecues and everything is just more of a man thing, where men just get together and it's an event to just grill meat. If you look at ads where dishwashing soap or a vacuum cleaner, it's mostly oriented towards women. And I guess that's where the masculinity has been embedded. They kind of think that not eating meat is for wimps, or it's just wussy. When it comes to bodybuilding and strength, men have this natural tilt towards eating meat for protein, which again is our favorite topic. And it's kind of sad, as when men are children, we teach them not to cry because it's not manly, it's not macho. We don't allow men to express their emotions freely, and I guess they grow up just with that toxic masculinity or hybrid masculinity, thinking that it's not okay to be emotional or empathetic, whereas women on the other hand are more expressive. They show their emotional side more.
It's funny that you say that as well, right? Because I came across this survey the other day about, so they basically surveyed a few and women and tried to understand from them. And sort of the response that they got in the survey was that a lot of men indicated like feelings of shame and embarrassment to reveal that they didn't want to eat meat. Some of them apparently like were very conscious and were very aware of the fact that they didn't want to eat meat, but then in a gathering or in a public space when they didn't want to reveal that, and so they would eat meat. I found that very interesting personally, because again, like I said, I've never felt that kind of feeling. I mean, granted, I've been vegetarian for a long time, so I guess that the thought process in my head was already pretty clear in terms of that's not I'm vegetarian. There's nothing to that, but I can see why for a lot of people like that it's such a defining trait for them as a person. I mean, when we talk about everything from barbecues to just meat eating as a thing, like the men are eating the steak, while and that kind of role as well, or that kind of sort of gender tag. Survey has actually like sort of collated that and said, yeah, men are embarrassed to reveal that they don't eat meat because it's just unmanly.
Yeah, but do you think as a man, like, have you ever had any such experiences? I mean, even in India, what meat does in the West, dairy does in the East, or at least in India, that you have to drink milk to be strong, and your mom will force you to drink milk and tell you you're going to be a strong man one day. Also, I think in those cliched Bollywood movies, on the first night in weddings, right, after weddings, they give the guy a glass of milk so that he can, have enough stamina and sexual prowess to impress his new bride. Have you gone through any of that?
Definitely not the last one. So yeah, growing up, of course, I think not just milk, but even like ghee, which is the clarified butter, which is predominantly used in India, unlike butter in the West, although now it's all even because of the amount of both nutrients and calcium and protein that exist in these components. Like this was quite a big thing. I still hear, of course, when we're talking about like Indian parents, I still hear them talk about their kids that way and be like, no, ghee and butter is good for like the growing boy. Like, and I think also to your point, if a girl grows up skinny, it's considered a good thing. But if a guy grows up skinny, it's considered like, oh my God, this is, what's happening to him? Like he's going to be lanky and skinny and this is horrible. So let's feed him fat. And that comes from like milk, cream, butter, ghee, whatever. So yeah, that stuff, yeah, I do. I definitely see that. I have had comments thrown at me when I was, when I went vegetarian properly, almost now 10 years ago, in the first couple of years, I'd be like, how can you not eat meat? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, you're a guy, you're growing, you're a young guy. Like, I have been told that. I don't necessarily take every one of them as a gender stereotype necessarily, as much as it was just alarm or bizarre to people that, there were serious vegetarians, work gatherings and that kind of thing. It used to be such a thing because I would have to be like, listen, I don't eat meat. And you know how it is. I mean, it's a lot better now, but you know how it is how it was back then. Let's say like 8 years ago, if you were doing these company dinners and stuff, like there were never vegetarian options in the menu. It was always like this side of potatoes. Like that's all you had to eat, right? And so that would always be a thing where I would have to go out of my way to request these things. And if I didn't, I would starve or, well, eat potatoes. But, also kind of relate to that because I know that it is hard. I know a lot of people just instinctively don't want to be singled out in this manner.
Yeah. I guess I've seen a lot of suppressing men's emotions. Mothers telling their sons not to cry because it's not manly. Fathers telling, and till date, like, you're just telling men don't be a pussy. Like, why is it such a bad word? You know what I mean? Like, why is being something feminine considered to be against masculinity? I guess like women should embrace their masculine side and men should embrace their feminine side at different during different situations. And I have been told once by somebody, it's easy for you to be a vegan because you're a woman, and I'm like, huh, what again? Yeah, we cannot be. Men are meant to eat meat. It's because of the way we are built, and I'm like, so now we are beyond how lions and humans are built. Now we are how men versus women are built.
A lot of examples of vegan powerlifters and vegan fighters who are thriving. There's also vegan strongman. You guys know Patrick Baboumian.
To get a different perspective on this, we've spoken to Hadi Al Muwaness.
A lot of men think that it's manly to eat meat and it's manly to ignore your emotions. Being empathetic is manly. I mean, if that's the reason that's stopping you from going vegan, just because you don't want people to see you as less of a man, then that just speaks a lot about you, and that means that you're insecure about yourself, and that you should look into yourself. But that's not being manly. Being empathetic is what a man is.
Well, there you have it. I mean, it's good to see the young men are not so gender bound in some ways. Yeah, but I think, I mean, like I said again, I do. As much as I personally have not been I don't believe I've been directly targeted as being a male vegan. It's very clear that there is this gender disparity, and I think it's important. I think, and that's one of the reasons. I think one of the points that we're trying to make as well, which is there's nothing wrong with being empathetic, right? There's nothing wrong with being vegetarian. I mean, I do know guys that are vegetarian and vegan, of course. But yeah, it is very likely that you will run into a woman vegetarian, and just the odds are slated that way. I've seen even among my friends, for example, right? It's the women that get queasy when we talk about like animal slaughter and stuff, and a lot of guys are just like, it's okay, it's part of life, it's one of those things. So I can see why that, I think, and that explains the disparity to a large extent. But and it's important that, I hope that it changes.
I also want to, like, on a closing note on this particular topic, I want to tell women who have sons to please raise your sons and let them cry. It is okay to cry. It is okay for a man to cry. It is okay for a man to be empathetic towards beings. And yeah, please don't hand him a glass of milk on his first night. I think there's a lot of stereotyping on nationalities. It's quite interesting because we're constantly judging, yes, I'm going to say it, we're constantly judging China to eat dogs while we continue eating pigs and cows. And I guess, like, when it comes to countries in the Middle East or in Southeast Asia, we have a completely different mindset towards them when it comes to meat eating, and it's just kind of more shocking, or rather pleasantly surprising, to find vegans over there.
I want to sort of lay that out too. I think we've seen the converse of this as well, right? So I've had people tell me, but I also just in general, expecting that as an Indian or as someone with Indian ethnicity, I'm better in tune with the fact that animal slaughter is a problem, and we do see that side of it. At the same time, we kind of expect that it's going to be hard and difficult and complicated. Even within India, when you have certain parts of India that are very meat heavy, but even then when you look externally, like you said, Middle East and everywhere else, where there is something. And when we look at the stats, though, it's quite amazing to see what really is the case. So you might expect, for example, places like, let's say, the UK and Europe or so on, to have a harder time adopting, more vegetarian options. Again, even in comparison to sometimes in the Middle East and India, where there are a lot of food and preparations that are vegetarian. Whereas, we look traditionally and we look from a stereotype perspective that the Americans, the Brits, or especially like even further Northern Europe, don't even know what it's like to really, really eat vegetables, right? Like it's meant to be this side thing, and it's never meant to, and that sort of contrast. But then when you look at things like the amount of increase in the vegan population in the UK, it's about 350% over the last decade. Or you look at the same thing with the US, and I remember seeing multiple stats, including the fact that the population was doubling over the course of a few years. So this is the good bit, right? That's good, very, very good to see that. Even, I mean, granted that when you're in a small number, it's easy to double, but it's still quite a steep rise in the amount of awareness and the amount of things. And we know also, like, part of it has been linked directly to the health aspects of it. So we're seeing more and more nutritionists and all these people, and I hear the same thing here in Dubai, where we hear a lot of nutritionists and stuff coming out and saying, adopt a vegan diet or adopt a plant-based diet. It's better for you just in terms of health.
In China now, there have been new dietary guidelines released by the Chinese government that encourages the Chinese population to reduce their meat consumption by 50%. Again, it's always easier to influence people by showing them the ill effects on their health. Everybody wants to take care of themselves first before they can take care of someone else. And I guess it's pretty much working around the world, where people are now realizing the health benefits of a plant-based diet. Research predicts that China's vegan market will grow more than 17% between 2015 and 2020. It's huge, and I think it's high time we move beyond the Chinese image and stereotype that we have of just eating dogs, and see that everyone around the world is working towards embracing a vegan diet and a vegan lifestyle.
You're talking about an Arabic and an Islamic culture. I think it is harder to be vegan than most cultures, but it's very, 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 very possible. I don't think it's an excuse. It's definitely possible. You can control what you put in your mouth.
Here's Hadi again, talked about his transition as a Syrian expat and what his family's reaction to all of this was.
Having my family and my friends not being supportive was the hardest part about being vegan. I still don't think that was a barrier. My family was against it. My friends made fun of it. I went vegan actually exactly in the 2nd of February 2016. And it was an overnight transition. I was convinced of it, and I decided, okay, tomorrow I'm just gonna try it out for a month, see what happens. And it just stuck with me. Initially it was for health. Now I also consider myself an ethical vegan as an athlete, trying to focus on protein-rich foods like beans, quinoa, soy products. But I have veganized a lot of Arabic foods, and a lot of Arabic food is also vegan, like hummus. You guys know the standard mezza, the salads. We also have, my mother have made a lot of the traditional Arabic food. I don't know if you are familiar with them, like kubba, stuff like even biryani and mandi. All these things my mother have veganized for me at least a couple of times. And I think they're just as good. And it's just simple replacements.
So, I mean, in Hadi's case, obviously, very clear independence about how he's handling some of this stuff and how his parents have sort of, come around to that. But I think that's not something we see everywhere, right? I mean, if you remember a few episodes ago, we interviewed Anam Mazhar from the Hub 7, who said that, initially she faced a lot of opposition from her parents about how. But at the same time, it's starting to seem to me, and based on all the people that we spoke to over the course of this, is that when the person is pretty headfast about the fact that no, I'm not comfortable doing this, and therefore I'm not going to do it. Eventually, in most of the stories that we had, the families came around.
Yes. And I guess families do come around eventually. You rebel against them over anything and they do come around. But I guess a lot of people, and fairly so, are scared to just go against their family. And if you come from an Italian, if you're an Italian and you're obviously coming from a very dairy heavy background, you have to have cheese, you have to have your grana padano in your pesto, you cannot just ignore it. And just telling your family that I've just cut out dairy one fine day, and they're like, what am I going to feed you? What has happened to you? The devils have taken over. So I do get how difficult it is. I think even as Indians, just telling our families that we're not going to drink milk, and they just think that you are bonkers, like, why are you doing this to yourself? Like, I've had my family members send out videos to me on why milk is, healthy for you.
Dood.
Yeah, for people who don't understand Hindi, dood means milk.
It was a campaign that was run in the 90s. To try and encourage more milk drinking.
That and the egg campaign, my God. Yeah, I must say, I fell for that campaign. It made me believe that yes, eggs and milk is all that I require in my life.
I mean, you just needed someone to tell you, yeah, go eat eggs, and then you found out they were delicious, and so you were like, oh, fuck, I'm not going back now, right?
So yeah, I do understand when people cannot rebel against their family, because it's not only, and in countries in countries in the Middle East and in Asia, families are large. Yeah. We're all close-knit. I'm glad that we have somebody who is busting these myths as well over here. We've spoken to Shayne Lopez-Sanchez, who comes from the Philippines and she lives in Dubai. As you know, Philippines is a very seafood-heavy culture, as well as a very pork and beef-heavy culture.
Actually, transitioning is easier because you're just dealing with yourself, but together with your friends and family, that was, I think, the hard part, because you have to explain yourself, you have to explain things, why and how, and where you get your protein, where you get all these things and stuff. Once I'm educated enough and informed enough, I can explain myself. I studied about, all the micronutrients and macronutrients that we get, the minerals that we get from the plants and vegetables. And yeah, I mean, difficult part is for the older people, I guess, because they tend to stick to their own traditions. This kind of people, they make family dinners and occasions or gatherings difficult for me because they make fun of me. I mean, at the beginning, it offended me, but now I just handle it really lightly. I'm also married with the Spanish, so a meat eater country as well. So I'm dealing with both sides. It was really difficult, but at the end of the day, I have explained myself, and I told them it's either you just have to ignore me or accept me and have a good relationship with me, because at the end of the day, I'm not gonna change because of your perception. When I was pregnant, I was also vegan, and so I educate myself furthermore how to be vegan while pregnant, because I face a lot of issues considering that I'm still living in Dubai and there's not even a vegan doctor there. There's not a lot of sources for this, so I just educate myself. All my vitals every month was normal, not even lower or above. It was just stable and normal. It was a very light pregnancy. I didn't have any cravings. I was carved up during pregnancy. I was eating a lot of kamote. We call it kamote. I think it's a purple potato. Oof, I really love those. Pumpkins and corn and a lot of spinach, a lot of veg actually. Not everyone knows about veganism. Not everyone knows that you can get protein from plants. Not everyone knows a lot of things about the nutrients that you will get from the benefits of being vegan. So I mean, there are two family members on my husband's side who become vegetarians and now considering to be vegan, by just telling informations about veganism, why I did it, for ethical things, for the animal's sake, and for the wellness actually, and for the earth. Like one night they converted into vegetarian and now they are planning to do the transition to veganism.
One of the common trends that I'm starting to see, granted very anecdotally, among all the people that I speak to, but then all the people we spoke to even for this episode, in terms of like getting the family to come around, in some cases even family members adopting or moving to at least a vegetarian diet or a meat-free diet, which I find fascinating. I find great because it's starting to tell you that a lot of this is happening because of, it's almost like a proof of concept, right? They're seeing that someone's doing this and they think, wow, that's, I mean, the first time I got it, I got the same thing, right? I got, what? Why? Like, why would you do that? And then it became like, oh, that's pretty commendable that you're doing that. And how do you stay on it, and how do you not like make a mistake or falter or whatever it is, and then sort of moving into like, oh, so if I were to do this, how do I go about it? And I see that from friends, I see that from family as well, which is just wonderful. I mean, it's great to see that there are people that are willing to listen and willing to do it. And we're seeing that across multiple communities, multiple cultures, multiple nationalities, multiple backgrounds over and over again, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, and also I guess Shayne, as she touches upon her pregnancy, and of course that's one of the things where the family really puts their foot down and tells you that no, you can do whatever you want, but don't let our grandson or grandchild get affected, And I see non-vegan parents around the world saying that you got to stop your eating habits on your children, and the vegan parents are like, but you do the same, like children are children. You got to tell them what they're supposed to eat. You tell your child to eat sausages. I tell my child to eat broccoli. Like, what? They don't come in this world and be like, hey, I want to eat that chocolate. I don't want to eat the strawberry. You influence their food choices, of course. Once they're older, once they're into their teen years, that's when they decide what is right or wrong for them. But when they're 7 and 6 years old, you got to tell them as parents what they're supposed to eat. So what other labels can you think of, Chirag?
Well, I guess which is one of your favorites, isn't it?
It's our favorite because we're on the extreme sides of it.
Yeah, the one where everybody thinks that just because you're vegan suddenly you become very healthy. Or more interestingly, I've also heard people think that just because you're vegan you've automatically become health conscious, and I find that it really interesting because yes, that is true in some cases, sure, but no, they're animal life conscious, and they believe in that and the ethical and that angle of it over just health conscious. And a lot of times that's the reason to do it, but as you will attest, I'm sure that doesn't automatically mean that I'm eating broccoli every day or avocados every day.
No, I need my burgers. As a woman, I also need my burgers, and as a vegan, I also need my burgers. Yeah, and I am that clumsy woman eater who just spills burgers everywhere. And shout out to those people who comment on Facebook posts where people have asked about, junk food options on veganism, and they're like, oh, but that's not healthy. Oh, but it's a lot of calories. Go away. I have my every right to eat my junk food. It's quite sad because it's probably another excuse for non-vegans to point out and fat shame people specifically, or body shame. I'm not going to say fat shame. It's another excuse for people who don't want to quit meat or who don't want to embrace veganism and body shame people. I've seen online on various forums where there has been a particularly curvy vegan, and she has been told that you can't say anything because you are fat, and I'm just like, she's standing up for animal rights. Like, there is no need to body shame her or him, or or even a thin guy who's out there just doing some vegan activism, and he's faced. Yeah, it's either because you're vegan that you don't look like a man and you don't have muscles and you don't have this and that. And I'm just
what was really interesting, like especially in the 90s, this was said about the Indian cricket team a lot. We were told that very often, that's the reason why we are not producing fast bowlers, because we're not a meat-eating country, or most of the team does not eat meat, or a lot of the team does not eat meat, and you'll never develop fast bowlers if you don't also eat meat.
interesting. Who said it?
I'm not putting any names out there.
I think I know which team you're talking about.
I'm not going to take any names today on the show.
Oh, come on, we must.
I mean, coming back to the point as well, like, I have been told that at some point. I mean, I remember this conversation a little bit distinctly because obviously it just was something that I just thought was quite bizarre to hear. When I don't know, we were at a work thing, and somebody was cooking, and it was like this whole thing. It was like it was a barbecue or something like that, and I just said, like, yeah, sorry, I'm not gonna eat that. Like, I'm not a meat eater, and I just got looked at, and I was told, like, but you're so fat. Like, how are you overweight if you don't eat meat? And I'm just like, you'll be amazed at how fatty vegetarian food can be and vegan food can be, by the way. Like,
Yeah, I think I'm just going to listen to my cat because my cat doesn't judge me based on my body type. So
this is coming from the person who then judges the cat based on their body type. Like, you've become so fat, come here and exercise.
Yeah, then now it's like a health issue. I mean, now that we're talking about labels, and I just thought of one more. I've seen a lot of people say that veganism is just a white person cult. It's so easy for them because they live in these first world countries and they have all these options. Why don't you come to my country over here in this part of the world and see how difficult it is to be a vegan? And people forget to realize that eating vegan cheese made with rich cashew from California is not being vegan. It's eating your beans, eating tomatoes, and eating broccoli, or eating whatever vegetables and fruits that your country produces is being vegan. So I guess that's one of the labels. It is not too as in your face as the previous labels that we spoke about, but I guess it is one of the things that people around the world also believe.
So I think that's quite a few things that we wanted to cover today in terms of labels. As always, I'm very curious to know what you guys think. Maybe some of the labels you guys have experienced or been told, because we've been told a lot of things over the last few years, and it'd be very interesting to hear how you guys feel about, not just about the labels, but about things you've been told or about stereotypes that you think are prevalent, especially when we're looking at it from a vegan perspective.
Yeah, do tell us whether you have been shamed to be a particular type of vegan, or you know of somebody who is shamed and not able to go vegan because of that. We're very happy to talk to them as well. Also send the bullies across to us, and Chirag will handle them. He is the healthy vegan in the group.
As always, you can listen to episodes of the show in any podcast player. Just look for the Two Vegans. And you can follow us on Instagram and you'll get all of Heathel's UK trip updates over the next week. So yeah, follow us on the.2.vegans on Instagram.
Yeah, until then, keep on keeping on and don't shame anyone for anything.
Ta-dum-dum.
Goodbye!